Lena crawled under the wooden frame of her bed, searching for a stray crayon. Instead, her fingers brushed against something cold and vibrating. She pulled out a brush. Its bristles shimmered like spun gold, and the handle pulsed with a rhythmic, steady light that cast long shadows. She stood, heart racing, and dipped the tip into a tray of blue paint. With a single, fluid stroke, she drew a small ball on a scrap of paper. The paper buckled. The ball lifted, hovering in the air before it bounced against the wall with a sharp, hollow thud. Lena gasped, her grip tightening on the pulsing handle. She moved to the desk, her movements frantic and precise. She painted a kite. As the final stroke connected, the paper tore away, and the kite soared toward the light fixture, fluttering against the ceiling. She watched it spin, the blue pigment glowing with a life of its own. Her room was filled with the hum of things that should not exist. She sat back, the brush still warm in her palm. She was the only one who knew. She had the brush, and the world was hers to draw. A sharp, rhythmic knock rattled the bedroom door. Lena froze. The kite she had just painted hovered near the ceiling, its blue tail twitching like a living thing. She shoved the golden brush under her blanket, her heart hammering against her ribs. The door creaked open. Tommy stood in the frame, his small hand clutching a half-eaten cookie. "Lena, want to play?" he asked, his eyes wide with expectation. The air in the room felt suddenly thin. Lena stood between him and the desk, blocking his view of the floating objects. "I am busy, Tommy. Go away." She did not look at him. She stared at the doorframe, waiting for the space to clear. Tommy's shoulders slumped. He held out the cookie, a small offering of peace. "I saved this for you," he whispered. Lena turned her back on him, her jaw tight. She heard his footsteps retreat, slow and heavy, down the hall, until the house fell into a hollow, suffocating silence. She pulled the brush from beneath the blanket. It lay dull and gray in her palm. The rhythmic pulse had vanished. She dipped the bristles into the paint tray and drew a puppy on a fresh sheet of paper. The paper remained flat. She gripped the handle, shaking it, but the golden light was gone. The gray brush felt like a stone in her hand. Lena paced the room, the silence echoing against the walls. She stopped at the window and pulled back the curtain. Below, the yard was bathed in the pale light of morning. Tommy was there, kneeling in the grass. He was helping a neighbor tie her shoelaces, his fingers steady and patient. He stood, laughed, and handed his toy truck to a friend, watching as they raced it across the lawn. Lena looked down at the brush. It remained dull, lifeless, a mere stick of wood and dried hair. She looked back at her brother. His face was bright, his movements fluid and unburdened. He did not possess a magical tool, yet the space around him seemed to hum with a simple, human warmth. She pressed her palm against the cold glass. The contrast hit her with the force of a physical blow. Her room was a tomb of her own making. She turned away from the window, the gray brush still clutched in her hand, and walked toward the door. Lena stepped into the yard, the brush hidden behind her back. Tommy was near the old willow tree, digging in the dirt with a stick. She stopped a few paces away, her pulse quickening. "Tommy," she called out. He turned, his face brightening with surprise. She pulled the brush from behind her back. It was still gray, still dull. "I have something special," she said, her voice steady. "Do you want to try it together?" Tommy dropped his stick and ran to her. He reached out, his fingers brushing the handle. As their hands touched the wood, a spark of gold light flickered along the bristles. It grew, pulsing with a rhythmic, warm hum. They knelt by a patch of flat, dry grass. Lena dipped the brush into the paint tray and pressed it to the ground. A massive slide surged upward. Tommy grabbed the brush, his eyes wide, and drew a swing set. The metal frames creaked into existence, swaying in the breeze. Lena watched Tommy bounce on the trampoline, his face bright with joy, as the golden light bathed the entire yard in a steady, brilliant glow. The sun dipped behind the horizon, casting long amber shadows across the grass. The playground structures remained, humming with a faint residual warmth. Lena walked to the center of the yard, the brush pulsing in her hand with a steady golden rhythm. She looked at Tommy, who was resting against the willow tree, his breath slow and even. She realized the magic did not belong to her alone. It thrived only when it moved between them. She walked back to her room, the silence now feeling peaceful rather than empty. She found a wooden box on her shelf and laid the brush inside. With a steady hand, she wrote on the lid, "For sharing only." She closed the box. The golden light faded into the wood, no longer a secret to be hoarded, but a bridge between her and the world outside. She sat by the window, watching the stars appear, knowing the brush would be ready whenever they chose to build again.